Streaming live in front of a studio audience from the Juneau Live studio at Resurrection Lutheran Church in beautiful downtown Juneau, Alaska, this is Juneau Sleeps with your host, Roy Anderson.
So I have a daughter who lives in Florida. I have another daughter who lives in Virginia. My mother, who lives in Wisconsin, my father lives in California. So I can say with all the confidence I can muster, America, this is Juneau Sleeps. My name's Roy. I'm hosting the show. To put the early kidding aside real quickly, we're here to talk about a serious subject. Before we get into that, I would like to just tell you a little bit about what I did with my morning. Cold morning this morning. I sleep with my windows open. Got up about 5:30, went and turned on my heat, put on some coffee for a cup of hot chocolate, curled back into bed next to my dogs and set the alarm for another hour. I did manage to get the hot chocolate off the burner first. Why is that? Why is that a story at all? Let me throw you a number. There are 1.6 billion people in our world that live in inadequate housing. Not here today to talk about inadequate housing, but it's a big number. Think about that, 1.6 billion. Show in the future we will be talking about inadequate housing. I do have a great friend of mine, probably the best man I've ever met in my life. Hard-working man, great family man, now a grandfather. Excuse me. He was not born in the United States, outskirts of Mexico City. And that gentleman will tell you what inadequate housing looks like. But we're not here to talk about that today. Throw you another number, 100 million. 100 million people we have in our world that are homeless, that do not have a place to get up in the morning. 100 million. Think about that number for a second. Every day I look in the newspaper. I just age-dated myself, didn't I? Newspapers. And I see another athlete in our country that signs a multi-hundred-million-dollar contract. Maybe that's the solution. If I was in charge of this world, I would take one of those contracts and we'd all of a sudden have 100 million more millionaires in our country. If it only was that simple. That probably wouldn't work because then people would give up their housing voluntarily to become a millionaire. But throw you another number, 580,000. That is the number of homeless in our country, 580,000. We're the greatest country in the world, one of the richest countries in the world. 580,000 people that we have living on our streets. Many of them elders of our world, of our country. Folks that have worked their whole lives, paid taxes, fought for our country. We have somebody at the studio that you'll meet later on that fought for our country and became a homeless vet, worked his way out of it by the grace of God and his hard work. 580,000 people in our country. Break it down a little bit more locally. And these numbers don't sound as big as the numbers that I've been throwing out at you. Folks in Alaska, homeless, as of January 2020, a little over 2,000. Imagine being homeless in Alaska. Wouldn't be an easy thing to do. 2,000 people we have in Alaska. Juneau, which is where we're coming from, 244, I believe was the last count. We have 244 people in our community that don't get to sleep indoors at night. I don't have the numbers right this second, but out of those 244, there are children. Imagine that, children in our community, in our country, sleeping on the streets. I don't have the numbers, but I know we have children sleeping on our streets because I have friends in this community that run shelters for children. Shout out to Juneau Youth Services in Juneau, Alaska. They do a wonderful job of supplying shelter for our homeless children. Wonder how a child becomes homeless. We could talk about that on another show. Yeah, let's get right into this. I have a gentleman that I've known for a number of years. He has fought for our country. He is born in Alaska, holds his heritage on his sleeve. Wonderful man. I've known him through several stages of his life, and we're gonna come over here and we're gonna introduce Tim. Thank you, brother, for being on the show. I'd like to say right off the top, thank you for your service. It is greatly appreciated and it's an honor to have you here. So let's talk about being homeless. Let's talk about your experience in Juneau.
Well, I don't know about in Juneau, but when I first got homeless, you know, I'm gonna go back in time here. I used to fish in the Bering Sea, and I came back from fishing one year in Seattle. That's where I became homeless. I was on the streets of Seattle for 9 months. You know, I had all this cash from the Bering Sea. After I got out of service, I went right to fishing the Bering Sea. Did that for 30 years, and came back from fishing one year. My mom, she wanted all my money. I said, okay, if this is gonna make you happy, here, 30 grand. I put it in her bank account, and you're done, get out of here. She kicked me out, put me on the streets for 9 months in Seattle. And, you know, I can close my eyes and I can see eating out of dumpsters. I know what it's like to eat out of dumpsters. Use cardboard for your bed, newspaper for your blanket, you know, and, you know, I had an older brother that was in prison for 16 years, and he was homeless. He was on Pioneer Square for, actually he died on the streets. And they always play that song by Phil Collins, Another Day in Paradise. That was at his service, because he was homeless. Another Day in Paradise. But one day you wake up and you think, there's gotta be something better. You look up in the sky and you ask, can you help me?
What do you, being on the street, you know, when I wake up in the morning, you know, my first thoughts are, you know, I gotta walk my dogs. You know, what am I gonna have for breakfast? You know, which is maybe something you think about too, but I have the advantage of walking to my fridge. What are some of the, you know, when you wake up in the morning, being on the streets, what are some of the first thoughts that you start thinking about?
Where am I gonna get my next meal? You know, or if it, you know, some days I go months without eating. You know, now it's today, you know, with my kids, I make sure there's something for them. They don't have to go through what I went through. Nobody should.
How did that end for you, that cycle of homelessness?
Well, you wake up one day and there's gotta be something better. Okay, I gotta do the footwork, do something to get in that, make a change.
But isn't that very difficult to do when you're waking up cold and hungry and don't know where you're gonna sleep the next night and don't know how you're gonna feed your kids?
Yep.
So
It is hard. I mean, nowadays, you know, like when I was on the streets, I had to stay out of my thoughts because I can ruin my day in a second. I got all that PTSD, whatever, you know, it is what it is. I'm in the solutions to the problem. I'm not gonna sit into my problem. I mean, I sat in my problem for years. I'm 61 years old. It isn't until now. It's getting better.
Yeah, so I've witnessed this before. The next time that somebody is walking past somebody on the streets that are, sleeping or obviously homeless, don't judge. I think most of America, I think we're 2 or 3 paychecks away from being homeless, most of us. I've been homeless myself. So yeah, the next time that you come across somebody in need, reach a hand out and don't judge and don't pretend you know where they come from. Were you homeless in Juneau?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. And any services that you used in Juneau to help you? Or is this more of a one-man show?
Well,
I mean,
I was always reaching out for the what resources were out there, and I had no idea.
You've used some of the shelters in Juneau.
Yeah, the shelters, Glory Hole,
It's Glory Hall now. It was the Glory Hole when
yeah.
we first met, but it is the Glory Hall now.
Where you get your meal, and I tell you, I have a lot to thank the Glory Hole because, all these organizations that reach out and help, and there's a lot of people out there that need help, and I know exactly what they go through. But one day you wake up, there's got to be something different. It's got to be better than this. I guess out of desperation, desperate to find a solution. I can't do this anymore. It isn't until now. It's taken all my life to realize what does Tim want? Let's find out what Tim's about. What does he want to do?
But do you realize how hard that is to find out who you are? Again, when you wake up cold and not knowing where your next meal is going to come from, or the focus of your day is to find a warm place to sleep. Yeah, shout out to my brother who's sleeping at Walmart, not even in a tent. He sleeps in a little corner. Man gets up every day, goes to work. Don't know how he does it. Yeah. So, and like you said, it took you some time to find yourself because of some of these barriers. It's hard. I give you a lot of credit, my friend.
Well, it was a hard road to get through this. I'm going to back up a little bit. When I was born, my mom gave me away from birth. And, I forgave my mom. She passed away a couple of years ago. But I forgave her. I've been waiting all my life for her to tell me that she loved me. I thought, what did I do to ever deserve this? Nobody. I want to be a survivor today. And it can happen. Just when you think that there's no hope, around the next corner, there's hope, and things can change. Anything's possible.
Well, and it has changed for you.
It has, tremendously.
You are in a, excuse me if I give it up, but you are in a fully leased, permanent unit.
Yes.
You have your family around you.
Yes.
So.
And I can't thank, the people, organizations that have been helping me get that way, get that unit.
No, we were just a vessel. You got that unit, brother.
Well, we all played a part. We all interwove, so got to take the credit. Hey, I'm saying thank you from my heart, because nobody has to go through homelessness.
Nobody should go through homelessness. Unfortunately, you heard my numbers
Right.
earlier
That's
on.
a lot of numbers. But see, something has to be done. I mean, I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm not really into politics, but I knew the governor when
Don't
before
get
he
me
was the
started.
governor,
That's for a whole nother show.
and I asked him, when are you going to help the veterans? There's veterans on the street right now, and
94, to be exact, homeless veterans in Alaska as of January 1st, 2020.
there's got to be more housing, not only just for
And those are the ones
veterans.
that were found and counted.
Right. But
Yeah,
they have to be able
that's
to address it, because it's not only the veterans, there's other people out there too, and it's got to be more and more addressed every day. I don't care, get more people, whatever you got to do to get solve the problem, But that person's going to want to have to take the first step to change, and I'm talking about myself, because I had to do that because I didn't have any more options left. I was desperately seeking a solution. I thought I was just gonna, I got very depressed, suicidal. Chris Kyle Veteran Hospital for 3 months for suicide. And it's getting better though, let me tell you. But if I were to say one thing to someone that's homeless, I'd say, don't give up. Anything's possible. Give them that hope, lift them up, encouragement. That's what I needed.
Yeah, every single one of us could.
That's what
could
we
do
all
a
need,
little bit
lifting
more.
up,
Yep.
And I need encouragement, just as well as everyone else, I mean, I could go into hours of what it was like, but, out of 5 of us, there's only 3 sisters, and I'm the only brother now. And they all live in Seattle, Everett, but I have grandchildren now that I think of. It's about the little people now. Half my life is done, and I want to be able to relax and give something back. Whether it's the little people or feed someone. When I cook, I feed. There's some guys that I see that I bring them a meal or whatever. Not that I'm looking for praise. I'm just trying to stay out of my mind and do something positive. And that was for a long time. I wasn't positive, and I was just negative, and because I was in a rut. And I had no way out.
So there's a stigma attached to being homeless, and it's a very unfair stigma. And hearing stories like yours, Tim, should show somebody why they just should not attach any kind of a tag to a homeless person. Again, you have no idea what this person's been through in their lives. You have no idea how they got there. Again, I've known Tim for a long time. You're a wonderful man, Tim.
Thank you.
Very, very happy, and if I may say, proud, without trying to be too weird of you. I've seen you come a long way. We do have a couple folks that we're going to bring on that are part of the solution building in our community. They both do wonderful things. If you could maybe slide down. I have coming up onto the stage, I have Luke from the Glory Hall, and I have a wonderful member of our Juneau community, Alexis. Luke, I don't think we've ever met. I've seen you on Zoom a couple times.
Zoom, yeah.
Yeah.
We have you. Good to
See
have
ya.
you. So, Luke, do you want to, if you're comfortable, telling us what you do?
Sure. So I am the Deputy Director at the Glory Hall here in Juneau. we're the foremost or the biggest shelter and soup kitchen for people experiencing homelessness. And yeah, so that's what I do.
And Alexis, do you want to tell us why you're here?
Yes, I grew up in Juneau. I grew up right downtown behind the Baranoff Hotel. I've lived here since I was 3. I was born in Fairbanks, and my mom used to donate to the Glory Hole, now the Glory Hall. I haven't seen the wonderful new facility, but I've seen pictures of it, read the article. But I walk all over town. I now live over at the Park Shore, and I see homeless people every day. And it just breaks my heart because I go to Whale Park, I see tents there, I try to talk to people if they're in their tent, you know, I don't want to scare them. I talked to a gentleman who recently was under the bridge in a really nice tent, had a bicycle, said he'd been there for 8 months, but the city had just kicked him off the property. And I understand it's city property, but he's way back, like he's not harming anyone, you know, he just seemed like a guy that was camping out, you know, like a guy you would, you know, be friends with and know. So, you know, I have a similar story to share. I was homeless, and when I walked into the old Glory Hole down on Seward Street, I came on the 12th of April in 2015. I'd lost a job. I was doing a contract job with the state legislature, and even though I grew up here, you know, I was very shocked to find myself, you know, walking in those doors. I knew that you could get in, you know, around back at 9 or 9:30, so I came right before that, and a very nice-looking gentleman walked up to me and he said, "Oh, do you have a donation? Can I help you, you know, get the stuff out of your vehicle that you just drove up in?" I said, "No, I'm here to stay." And he looks at me, he's like, "You don't look like someone who needs to be here." I said, "Hey, appearances are deceiving, and, you know, judge not, lest ye be judged." And as you know from working at St. Vincent's, and as Luke knows, as a woman, when I went to the Glory Hole, as I said, now the Glory Hall, but there was 4 to 1, you know, there was way less women. I think, you know, there might have been 5 to 10, you know, the short time that I spent, 60 nights over the 5 months, and some nicest men I've ever met had my back. I knew people that would come in for lunch and dinner, especially this wonderful Sunday brunch that they do, and they were people that I've known from growing up here, being friends with one gentleman's younger sister who's been one of my best friends since we grew up together. And yeah, he was like, the first time he saw me there too, he's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Hey, you know, there but for the grace of God go I." And I just learned, you know, a lot of humility after spending 60 nights over the course of 5 months in 2015. And you know, my parents have both passed away, and I was like, "Okay, Mom and Dad, you're gonna watch over me."
May I assume it's experiences like that that lead up to what you're doing today?
Yes, and also because I read this wonderful editorial by Laura Roram, who, as fate would have it, is a member of this very church, and she had a daughter, Tanya, who passed away in 2018 at age 45. She wrote this piece on October 22nd on the faith page of the Juneau Empire, and this is what really got me to kick into gear, because in her last paragraph she says, you know, working for justice with and for homeless people is doing God's will. May we overcome discomfort and answer his call to action. So I thought, okay, this is my call to action. I knew that the warming shelter was going in downstairs here, because you know, I've come here to donate items to their room, you know, where you can put clothes and all sorts of other items that have donated, as well as food. And I'm hopefully going to start volunteering here at their food bank on Monday. And I thought, okay, I'm going to call there. And I knew that there was a Pastor Karen. I'd never met Brad before. Brad said, "Can you come over tomorrow and meet me?" We sat right here. We talked. And then I called Luke, and you know, we've been connecting. We were on a Juneau afternoon this week, and then I called St. Vincent's, of course, because I was raised Catholic. And, you know, I just think, oh, I don't want to get the credit for all the work that people like you do, Roy, people like Brad and Pastor Karen.
We can't do it without people like you. so.
Yeah, and I mean, just what Luke does. I wish you'd talk about the number that he's told me are currently in his facility.
I'm sure I could talk about that. So,
Well, Let me, if I may interrupt,
Sure, yeah.
just a quick question. Was there anything specific, and you can, if it's too personal, we can go on to the numbers, in your life that led you to the life of service for the folks that we serve?
me.
Yes.
Actually, yeah, I have, I have a similar experience. While I was in college, I'm from Seattle area, and I went to college at the University of Washington, and at that time, I got like pretty heavily involved in hard drugs, and upon graduating from college, promptly moved onto the street myself, and lived as a homeless, very addicted heroin addict for 3 or 4 years, on and off a little bit, and then ended up in and out of treatment, I think 9 times, and eventually got clean, and decided in order to stay clean, it was going to be like my job to give back, because I felt like I'd taken so much, and I come from like it's a unique standpoint, I guess, having been on both sides, right? So this sort of work, yeah, it's very important that I, for myself and for like the community that's struggling, it's very important that I give back, I guess, yeah. So.
Thank you
That
for
wasn't
sharing.
employer.
That's powerful. Thank you. Yeah, let's talk some numbers.
Sure. So, exciting and not exciting, right? Because when we were downtown, we could serve far fewer people because we had much less space. But since moving out into the valley on Teal Street on July 21st, we were able to, we have 43 small sleeping spaces, which are all full, and another 21 bunk spaces, which are all full. And then we have like 4 or 6 people on the floor. So right now we have, I think, 64 people staying at the Glory Hall. So it's overcrowded. And it's amazing that we can serve so many people, but it's also so sad that there are so many people.
Compared, what were the numbers downtown that you could serve?
Well, during coronavirus, we were only able to sleep like 12 people because of social distancing. There were 3 dorms at 247 South Franklin Street, a women's dorm and 2 bigger men's dorms. And for a short time during coronavirus, we weren't able to sleep anybody because I think the city said, not safe. And then they came back and said, with 6 feet distancing. And so we took a bunch of bunks out and then like walled the bunks off with boards, so they were like little cubbies.
Almost impossible in that building.
Oh, it was, yeah, it was
Almost,
almost
yeah.
impossible. And we ended up getting 12 people in there. So thank God for St. Vincent de Paul and the warming shelter that was at the Jack, because that was able to sleep many people, and it was close to the Glory Hall. So for about 1.5 years, we had this kind of like, come hang out at the Glory Hall in the day, and then, walk a few blocks down to the Jack at night, and that's just kind of what people did. It was like a migration, I guess, and it worked somewhat. And then at one point, we for like the last 6-8 months, maybe, the Glory Hall moved from 247 South Franklin Street for day services into the Filipino Community Hall, which is right next door to the old Glory Hall. And so we were able to serve a lot more people in day services then, because that space was maybe 3 times the size.
The Glory Hall does more than just allow people to sleep.
Yes, the Glory Hall serves, our mission statement is to provide food, shelter, and compassion to those most in need, but these days we're finding ourselves going like well above and beyond that mission statement. We do provide shelter for right now 66 people, maybe 64 people. We also provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner 365 days a year.
And not just to your
No, anybody
clientele.
can come in to the Glory Hall.
We're
and
neighbors.
eat. Yeah.
My senior building, I have folks that come over
Oh, sure.
to eat
Yeah,
with you
yeah.
guys.
You don't have to be staying at the Glory Hall to use our day services,
Yeah.
and that's hang out in the day room, do your laundry, take a shower, eat food. There's also snacks all day, or seek, like kind of small time case management services where we route you to, resources that you may need. And as I was saying, like our mission statement to provide food, shelter, and compassion to those most in need. We are doing those things, but lately we're also routing people into all sorts of permanent, stable housing, which is
Awesome.
great.
Yep.
Yeah. Since we've opened at our new location on Teal Street on July 21st, we've moved 45 people off the street into into permanent stable housing, to reunite them with their family, wherever that may be all over the country, or into treatment.
Or into transitional.
Or
We
into
have one of our
transitional housing,
longtime homeless
Yeah,
folks
yeah,
living
yeah,
in
we've
our
moved a
transition.
number of people into St. Vincent de Paul. Yeah. So we're really working closely with like partnering agencies like St. Vincent de Paul, with the Bartlett Hospital navigators who help put people
They're
into
wonderful,
housing.
by the way.
Yeah, wonderful. With AWARE, with the AHSC, the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, the Alaska Housing Development Corporation. Everyone's just been wonderful, and right now we have, I think, 12 people living at the Glory Hall that have vouchers for housing, emergency housing vouchers, or VASH vouchers, or
The,
any kind of voucher.
And you're only going to know who I'm talking about there if you're on the inside. But the individual that we have at transitional is going to transition into permanent, maybe for the first time in his life, to have
Yeah.
to have a solid situation with support around him.
Definitely for the first time in his adult life.
yeah,
Yeah.
so very exciting.
Which is like so amazing.
And
Yeah.
these vouchers, and we don't need to get too deep into them, but some new vouchers being supplied by the Glory Hall.
Yeah, amazing stuff. The snag we're running into is there's so little affordable housing in Juneau. So we have all these people sitting with vouchers, and we will find housing for them. I have faith in that. But you'd think getting the money is the big problem, which it is a problem. But it seems like
Well,
finding the actual housing is also
And I don't
a problem.
want to know how much time we have here, so I don't want to get too deep, but there's also the stigma, as I was talking about earlier, attached to the folks that we serve, and to go up to a landlord, even with
Absolutely.
a voucher in hand, is not always the easiest thing to do.
No, and it doesn't always work out, unfortunately. Where it's
Yeah.
just like, this is paid for.
Yeah.
And there's still, there's a stigma. But I do think it helps when people like case management at Glory Hall
Yes.
or any of our partnering agencies, when somebody can kind of usher these individuals into housing and have a case manager working
The
with them on their
collaboration
side.
going on right now in Juneau is just amazing.
No, it is,
Yeah.
and getting better,
Yeah.
With the Teal Street Center that's going to be built next
Yeah.
to the Glory Hall, and between the Glory Hall and St. Vincent de Paul, we'll have like a campus for services for people experiencing homelessness or, which is
So-
very, very exciting.
Let's talk to Alexis about something to do with a clothing drive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew Dan Austin. We both were legislative aides in the Alaska State Legislature. And he worked for Kay Brown, I worked for Johnny Ellis, and many other legislators. And as I said, I was raised Catholic, so I'm very familiar with the work of St. Vincent de Paul and how much it's grown over the decades, from Robert Paradis starting it, and Dan being there for 20 years, and just incredible expansion. I mean, I didn't even know until I was talking with Dan about 6 years ago that there was a homeless shelter upstairs. I knew St. Vincent had housing, and I knew Smith Hall was senior housing, but I didn't realize that it was so extensive.
And just to clarify, St. Vincent de Paul runs a shelter, but it's not the same kind of shelter the
Right.
Glory Hall runs. It's not an emergency shelter. It's more of a transitional
Right.
housing. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But I know you have separate rooms
Yep.
too,
Yep.
because I've met some single parents, not just single moms, but single parent fathers who have stayed there with their children. Plus, you own numerous buildings too.
We have
in town.
5 buildings,
Yeah.
over 100 units, permanent
Yeah, and
units.
so I just think that's amazing. The more I started learning about this, but because I read this article, I just thought, well, I need to organize. I felt called.
So you're not affiliated with any agency in town. You're
No.
just a member of our community
Yeah.
that wants to help.
Yeah, and I just have seen those people, as I said, outside, and I knew, this was when it was still in the 40s, and I knew it was dropping down to the 30s, and I thought, wow, I need to try to organize a clothing drive, a winter clothing drive. And so, I've learned that Brad and Karen are extraordinary at all the work they do here at the Resurrection Lutheran Church, at the food bank, but he also is designing our posters, which should be done soon, but he's juggling so many things, opening of the warming center, and we will be doing it for 3 weeks, but I tell people, they need year-round. Like Luke's already put out a barrel in the front of his building, or not outside the building, but inside the building. And people can donate to the Dan Austin Center at St. Vincent de Paul. They can do the Glory Hall at, what's the address,
8715 Teal Street.
And then, you know,
8617 Teal Street. We're next door neighbors.
exactly. So, and the Dan Austin Center is right there on your, what I like to call your campus. And of course here for the warming shelter. And they have a whole room back here, as people who are familiar with the Resurrection Lutheran Church know. And I brought some stuff over because, again, I just see people in the cold. And I think, I'm cold in my condo. I think, oh my gosh, when I walk over here these last night and today, I'm like, it's cold. You can die in this kind of weather outside at night when it drops into the 20s or the teens. So yeah, I wanted to do the first annual Dan Austin Memorial Winter Clothing Drive. I reached out to Brad first, I called Luke, then I called, I didn't
boss.
know, yeah, St. Vincent, I didn't know Dave, I don't know Dave either in person, but I'd read, the article, I Googled who was in charge now and his background. I know that Dave Ringel is the general manager of St. Vincent de Paul and is a former teacher. So yeah, and I know a number of people on your board and have, been on the board over the years. And so yeah, I just wanted to do something. I just feel called for the holidays, even though I've personally struggled financially. I've had financial insecurity practically my whole adult life. I've never married. Maybe if I had a husband, I wouldn't be in this situation. But I'm glad to be single most of the time. So, yeah, I just want to help people because I think you get to a certain age and service, becomes really important. I actually spent 20 years attending Al-Anon meetings in this very library on Saturdays. I remember 1996, September, my first meeting in the library here at the Resurrection Lutheran Church. And I attended when I lived in Sitka and in Ketchikan and Anchorage and Fairbanks. I've lived all over the place. I just think that you all know who are involved, and as he so, candidly shared, Ed, about the fact that a lot of people who are homeless have mental health issues. And 7 years ago, it'll be 8 years in January, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. And anxiety is not general if you have it, but that's the category for panic attacks and everything else that falls under that.
Being homeless in itself will create symptoms.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, I don't know the statistics, maybe the rest of you can speak to this. I would say 75% have both mental health issues and then substance abuse issues. And I'm not judging, I'm just saying that helps them get through a cold night. I know as just, Laura Roram in this piece said her daughter would get herself arrested so she could be inside in a jail or a facility because she was chronically homeless and struggling with very serious, mental health issues.
And maybe we can, I'm getting show ideas as we go. We can do a show at some point about the correlation between those symptoms that you're speaking of and homelessness and how they mingle, and they do mingle hard.
And I hate that word stigma because being raised Catholic, I think of Jesus and the stigmata and
My
the
apologies.
marks on his hands when he was crucified. And I think, you know what? I've said this for years. If he came back now, in this day and age, he would be a homeless person. So people would have a lot more compassion, as you mentioned, and not judge. Because that's what I've learned. Judge not, lest ye be judged. When this guy, at the glory hole said, "Oh, are you coming here to donate?" I said, "No, I'm coming here to stay." He's like, "What?" I said, "Hey, it happens to everybody at one time." I mean, I talk about Tyler Perry, the richest, wonderful African-American actor, director. He was homeless, living in his car. Madonna, when she first got to New York, she was homeless, living, on the streets of New York and sleeping in abandoned buildings.
More local, Jewel.
Yeah, Jewel.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I love Jewel.
Yeah.
And her.
She was homeless.
Yeah, she was.
She was. She was in a car, I think with her mother, as a matter of fact.
I think so.
So, yeah, I just, it's heartbreaking to me because it's just cold.
So quickly, let's circle back real quick and get to the nitty-gritty of the clothing drive. How does that look, and where are we setting up? How is it being staged?
You want me to talk about? Okay,
Yeah.
so the Alexis has arranged the first ever Dan Austin Memorial Winter Clothing Drive. It started 2 days ago, and it's going to go for the next 3 weeks.
Donations from the community?
Yep, donations for the community. Winter clothing like snowsuits, coats, hats, gloves, sleeping bags, even children's winter clothing, stuff that is in good condition and clean. We'll ask that you would please wash or dry clean before. And there are 3 drop-off locations. The Glory Hall at 8715 Teal Street. We're open from 7:30 a.m. until 9 p.m. 7 days a week. Here at the Resurrection Lutheran Church, I think you can donate at downstairs at the emergency
Upstairs.
shelter or upstairs.
Yeah,
maybe.
so I'll fill in from the booth up here. At Resurrection Lutheran Church, it's a little tougher to donate, but you can donate when the food pantry is open, which is on Mondays from noon to 4:30. You can donate on Sundays when we have church services, which are from at 9:30 is our church service. You can donate at that time. And then whenever we're running Juneau Live events in the studio, we have a studio audience, which we always do for events, and those you can find on junolive.org. Otherwise, you can call the warming shelter manager, me, and that number is on warmingshelter.org.
And who was the voice in the sky?
Oh, yes, and this is Brad Perkins, the producer of Juneau Live, and also the warming shelter manager. And my phone number is on that site, as well as an email on that site, warmingshelter.org, as well as junolive.org. So.
And I'd be happy to share my phone number because I live in town, and if people can't come here, and there's not the right time for their schedule, my phone number is 907-793-0701. It's my cell phone, and I would be happy to tell them where I live. I already said the Park Shore, but I don't want total strangers coming up and knocking on my door because I'm still a little bit paranoid about the pandemic, and I've been vaccinated, but yes, I normally, wear masks everywhere. So yes, as he said, clean items, dry cleaned. Again, my concern is for the germs. Unfortunately, I've become a bit of a germaphobe during this time, like Howie Mandel, comedian who's always been a germaphobe. But yeah, you don't want to pass anything on to people, and you want, nice donations. I'm also, once the posters are done, going to reach out because I grew up here. I know a lot of business owners, and I know that they will give. I've already spoken with the manager twice, Rick at Foodland and Ace Hardware. It's all one big facility. You're under the same umbrella, just 2 separate businesses. And I've been in there. They have what I call the hot pockets, which are really cool that you put in your gloves. And they had like 8 different kinds. I didn't know you put them in your boots and other parts of your body for people who go out, hunting or fishing or camping out, but for the homeless people too. They have a sleeping bag, they have hats, scarves, they have extra tufts. Oops, I don't have them on. I took them off when I got here. But I bought my extra tufts there. They have other less expensive boots. But yeah.
Is the clothing specifically for homeless or families in need?
That's a good question, because I was thinking about homeless, but I know, and Brad can jump in.
Yeah, so I can jump in. I think at least for Resurrection, for the warming shelter, we would prefer for the people that are in the warming shelter, because we don't really run clothing. If people want to make donations of clothes, we prefer they do that at the St. Vincent store.
Yeah, we do have other avenues in Juneau for families in need, so
Right,
yeah,
so
that's a good point.
Probably better for that. Also, we didn't quite finish doing the list for dumping things off at St. Vincent de Paul. If the Dan Austin Center is open, and it's not open a lot, you can go to Smith Hall, which is next door, which is, and that's the administrative offices for St. Vincent de Paul, and they have been there if they're open. And the hours for that you can find on the St. Vincent de Paul website, and you can look that up on the internet. And we have a web page for this thing, and that you can find on warmingshelter.org. There you'll find a link on that page telling you with updated information about any of these things and where to go, with everyone's contact information and all of that. So if you're looking for more information on the web.
Yeah, and as you can attest, Roy, since you work at St. Vincent de Paul, the Dan Austin Center is for anybody.
It
is
is.
free, and that's
is.
why I have for years been giving to Smith Hall and putting it on that table right in the front door of the administrative offices. You now have to always have a mask on. They don't sometimes allow you in, which I understand because of the seniors that live there and because of, our
We've probably
rates.
run into each other, but I didn't recognize
Yeah.
you because you had your mask.
Exactly, the sky-high rates that we have now, ironically in Alaska for the pandemic. But I think that's wonderful, and it warms my heart because Dan is up in heaven, Austin, going, that is so cool. We're giving out blankets for free at the Dan Austin Center.
So I'm going to
Clothing.
kind of wrap up your show for you because we do eventually have a time limit.
Sorry.
So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm going to throw one more pitch in here while you're in here also. Is that the free clothing and an area that Delilah runs at St. Vincent de Paul in the Dan Austin Center, which by the way I named when I was general manager there,
I can attest to that.
is the stuff that comes out of the thrift store that either doesn't sell or they decide not to shelve. That's also where Resurrection gets materials for an area we have during our food pantry, which is noon to 4:30 on Mondays. We have also an area of clothing that's not specifically for the people in the warming shelter that we have set up also. So, and we do have, Resurrection Lutheran runs the largest food pantry in Southeast Alaska. We give away over 1,000 pounds of food, we distribute over 1,000 pounds of food a week out of that food pantry up here for you. And anyone's welcome, of course, just like everything else that for this population. And you don't need to be homeless. And matter of fact, most of our clients that come in here, our patrons, are not homeless. They're just people in need, especially during the pandemic. So you come in here and we give away, we have also an amazing food pantry that you get to come in, you get to go shopping down this 100-foot long line of food where you are walked down by our staff and they talk to you about what you need and they help you with recipes and you get to talk to people and you get some lunch at the end of the line, and so it's a great opportunity to come here, see people, talk to people, and then you can shop from these clothes, same clothes that Delilah has that we get from the things that come out of the St. Vincent store. So
And this is why I appreciate living in Juneau. People like you. Tim, thank you very much. Voice in the Sky says we have to go. We'll see you in 2 weeks.